Washington just tightened its chip export rules again, and this time it's not just some short-term tactic. What really started as a trade dispute is now a full-blown structural shift, one that could redefine how and where the world's most advanced semiconductors are made. And if you're tracking how these moves are shaping the global chip economy, well, you're in exactly the right place. Welcome to the chip market, your go-to for semiconductor strategy, tech policy, and market insight. We've already explored the global chip rivalry in the Great Silicon Divide and China's leverage with materials and rare earths, hidden power. So today, we're connecting the dots, diving deep into how these export controls are reshaping the entire semiconductor industry and, maybe more importantly, what it all means for investors. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break this new landscape down into 5 key takeaways that every investor really needs to understand. We'll kick things off with the policy shift itself, then look at how big tech is scrambling to adapt. From there, we'll zoom out to see this great silicon divide, figure out where the new money is flowing, and finally, get into why the old loopholes are closing up fast. First, and this is maybe the most crucial point, you have to get that these changes are not temporary. We've moved past the world of short-term trade tactics. This is now permanent structural policy. The policy landscape has been an absolute roller coaster. You had one administration imposing the strictest rules we've ever seen on stuff like high bandwidth memory, only for the next one to come in and create a ton of uncertainty by rescinding them before turning around and negotiating this completely wild revenue sharing deal with the chip giants, and then suddenly exemptions for key allies revoked. It's been a dizzying, whiplash environment for anyone trying to keep up. But here's the thing. Underneath all that chaos, a very clear strategy has emerged. Small yard, high fence. The idea isn't to sanction everything, not at all. It's to build a permanent, very high wall around very specific critical technologies. So the key takeaway here is that this is no longer a negotiating tactic. It's a structural, long-term containment policy, and it's designed to permanently impair China's ability to produce the world's most advanced chips. Okay, so how are the biggest players in this game, NVIDIA and AMD, actually trying to adapt to these new rules of the road? This table really tells the whole story of just how differently these two AI giants are positioned. I mean, look at NVIDIA. Their direct revenue from China has dropped, yeah, but their gross margins are absolutely massive. And their pricing power, thanks to that CUDA software ecosystem that basically locks developers in, it gives them a ton of flexibility. AMD, on the other hand, is a bit more dependent on that China market, and they have narrower margins. That just gives them a lot less room to absorb these policy shocks. And this brings us to one of the most surprising, kind of wild twists of the last year. That number, 15%. This was part of an unprecedented deal where both NVIDIA and AMD agreed to give 15% of their China AI chip sales directly to the US Treasury. Yeah, you heard that right. That was the price for getting the export licenses they needed for their new China-compliant chips. This deal is a real game changer. It lets both companies stay in that huge Chinese market, but it also creates a brand new cost of doing business there. It's effectively a tax. For the government, it's a new revenue stream to the tune of almost $3.5 billion a year. Now, for NVIDIA, with its incredible pricing power, they can probably just raise prices to offset that hit. But for AMD, this poses a much bigger risk to their profit margins. You gotta wonder, could this set a precedent for other tech sectors facing similar geopolitical heat? Now, these company-specific moves are happening against a much larger backdrop. We're talking about the fracturing of the entire global tech ecosystem. The Great Silicon Divide is no longer just a theory, it's very, very real. This slide right here basically lays out the new reality. We're seeing two totally distinct semiconductor ecosystems emerge. On one side, you have the US-aligned bloc. They've got access to the most advanced manufacturing tech in the world, like extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography from firms like ASML. On the other side, you've got the China-aligned bloc, and they're being forced to build their own system using older, less precise technology. This split is going to reshape everything from R&D to capital flows for decades to come. And TSMC is the absolute perfect case study for this alignment. They used to be a major supplier to Chinese firms like Huawei, but US policy has forced a massive structural shift in their business. Their China revenue has plummeted, while North America now accounts for a staggering 70 to 75% of their sales. They've become, really out of necessity, a cornerstone of that US-aligned tech bloc. So, with all this disruption, you're probably wondering, where are the investment opportunities? Well, this new landscape is creating some powerful tailwinds for a whole new set of winners. Just look at this.
A massive wave of government money is being deployed to build domestic and so-called trusted supply chains. And as you can see, we're talking tens of billions of dollars from the US, Europe, and India. This isn't just a one-off payment. It is a multi-year fire hose of capital, and it's creating a huge tailwind for specific sectors.
So who are the clear winners here? Well, entire countries are benefiting as companies adopt this China plus one strategy. Places like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Mexico are becoming key new hubs. Then you have the companies actually powering this construction boom. We're talking equipment suppliers like ASML and Lam Research, and advanced packaging firms like Amcor. This is a fundamental rewiring of the global supply chain, and you can bet that capital is flowing right along with it.
But what about the workarounds? I mean, can't companies in China just find ways around the rules? Well, that gray zone is shrinking, and it is shrinking fast because regulators are getting much more aggressive.
We've seen this constant cat and mouse game play out. First, NVIDIA creates slightly less powerful chips to try and get around the initial rules, so the US comes back and updates the rules to close that specific loophole. Then, when a gray market of smugglers pops up, regulators counter by blacklisting over 100 of those intermediary companies. The message from regulators is crystal clear. The loopholes are being systematically sealed shut.
And the scale of the problem they're tackling is just immense. In a single quarter, it was estimated that over $1 billion worth of banned NVIDIA AI chips were smuggled into China. This isn't some small-time operation. It's a massive, sophisticated network that enforcement agencies are now laser-focused on dismantling. And they're not just focused on smuggling. Regulators are closing other, more sophisticated backdoors. They're proposing rules to stop Chinese firms from simply renting access to top-tier American GPUs through cloud services. They're tracking things like Huawei's die bank, which is a finite stockpile of TSMC chips that's going to run out. And they're aggressively blacklisting foreign subsidiaries that are used to hide where the tech is really going. That gray zone is disappearing.
So ultimately, these changes aren't just about chips. They're about who controls the future of computing. If this gave you a clearer lens on where semiconductor policy and profits are heading, drop your thoughts in the comments. Share it with someone who's tracking tech strategy. And definitely hit subscribe so you don't miss the next drop from the chip market.